Very good afternoon. Welcome to our policy dialogue and launch of a new EPC publication called Towards Circular E-Waste Management, How Can Digitalization Help? I'm Annika Hedberg. I'm Head of Sustainable Prosperity for Europe program as EPC and will be moderating today's discussion, which is kindly supported by WEEE Forum and SENS eRecycling. I would suggest that we start today's discussion by everyone looking around the room where you are sitting or standing and noting the items with the plug or battery that you see. If you look at them, you see that these items have become indispensable part of our lives. But at the same time, these electrical and electronic items, be it computers, smartphones, vacuum cleaners, or fridges, they become waste, and this often comes with unnecessary economic, health, and environmental costs. And taking that e-waste is one of the fastest growing waste streams globally. This is becoming a serious issue. And thus, it's in our interest to address these costs, the challenges in the EU and beyond. E-waste contains significant amount of resources, including critical materials, precious metals, iron, aluminium, and recovering these would actually help us become less dependent on external resources and volatile markets, help reduce environmental climate footprint related to extraction of these resources, and it should make economic sense. And if we become better in treating electrical and electronic equipment that contain hazardous materials at the end of life, we can actually reduce related pollution and potential health hazards. So this should be a no-brainer. This is something that we certainly want to do. And indeed, the EU has recognized the challenge. It has put in place a policy framework to become better in managing e-waste. We have also EU targets for collection of WEEE, that is the electrical and electronic equipment waste. But a lot remains to be done to actually improve prevention, collection, and treatment of e-waste in the EU. And it's in this context, taking these challenges, that the EPC together with the WEEE Forum and SENS eRecycling launched a project to explore how digitalization, better use of data and digital solutions could help improve the management of e-waste. And we at EPC, we have already for several years, we've been looking at how digitalization can support the green transition, help address our sustainability challenges. And we would argue that using digitalization to improve e-waste management surely provides an interesting and a valuable case in practice. So stay tuned. We'll present you shortly the findings of the project, and we very much look forward to discussing the challenges, the potential, the prospects for using data and digital solutions to support circular value chains for electronics, and how digital solutions can be used to enhance prevention, collection, and treatment of e-waste in the EU, as well as obviously the role of EU policies and financial instruments in this effort. Just as a word of practicalities, we look forward to hearing from you in the course of the event. And if you're interested to ask questions, you can either indicate that you wish to speak, or alternatively, you can also use the space provided to ask short written questions. We'll be joined today by a wonderful group of speakers who will surely bring very different perspectives to the discussion. But let's start with an introduction from Stefan Sipka, my colleague, policy analyst at the EPC, who will present the main findings of the new discussion paper that is actually available online at the moment. But Stefan, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Annika, and good day to everyone. And yes, happy to share some of the key insights from our latest discussion paper. Just to, yeah, I hope you see it well. And yeah, so yeah, these are some of the key findings, and of course, details and additional points are available in the paper, which is now accessible online, as Annika pointed out. So this discussion paper is part of a wider project on e-waste and the creation of a digital circular economy. And as Annika mentioned, we implemented this project also in partnership with the WEEE Forum and SENS eRecycling. And basically what we were looking at is how digitalization can make our circular value chains, our electronics value chains more circular, but in particular to make e-waste management more circular. So that was under the spotlight, and the role of EU policies in supporting this digitalization for circular e-waste management. And so what have we done in practice? We organized a workshop, a number of interviews with a wide range of stakeholders, and also conducted a survey coupled with desk research. The final output is the discussion paper that was published today. Why e-waste? Again, in short, fastest growing waste stream, as Annika pointed out, contains precious and dangerous substances. Precious means that they are important for our economy, but they're limited in nature, getting depleted, and they're limited in Europe. So we depend on foreign markets to import these precious metals and other materials. E-waste collection is currently very low globally and not optimal at the EU level, which means that a lot of these materials are actually lost, or improper e-waste management can result in pollution. If we don't use our electronics as much as possible and we don't recycle them, we need to produce new electronics from virgin materials, which adds to greenhouse gas emissions and also pollute the environment. So then we asked the question, how can digitalization help overcome some of these challenges and make e-waste management more circular, given that we are currently experiencing, of course, the digital transformation is changing how we do business, how we live our lives. So arguably it can also make electronics more circular and e-waste management more circular. So that's something that we were looking at. This topic is also part of a bigger picture. So we have the European Green Deal, and a number of other areas of relevance to greater sustainability of our economy, and circular economy and greener ICT is, let's say, an important piece of this wider puzzle. And the Green Deal recognizes the twin transition, and with the help of digital transformation coupled with green transition, we can also make our economy more circular and our electronics more ICT. So that's like to paint a bigger picture. But how can actually digitalization serve as an enabler? The paper contains a long list of cases, concrete cases, how this can be done. Here, I just want to make a reference to a couple of points, how this can be done. So when we look at the prevention of e-waste to begin with, for example, artificial intelligence, AI, can improve product design. It can speed up the research of more circular materials, components, and so on. Digital product passports, digital tags can help different stakeholders in the value chain to access product-related information, which can then make management of electronics more circular and prevent e-waste. Blockchain can ensure secure information transfer in the value chain, which is also important for this point. Online platforms can be used, for example, by waste operators or repairers to access information on the product, like the manuals or the content to help repair the product. Collection of we talk about the collection of e-waste once the electronics reaches end of life phase. There are different digital tools like entry cards for recycling centers, electronic payments that can improve the safety of collection points, improve collection, avoid illegal waste management, and prevent scavenging. Online platforms can also improve coordination between, for example, waste collectors, law enforcement agencies, inform consumers how to dispose e-waste, and also make e-commerce more circular. And I'm happy to elaborate more upon that later. Sensors, Internet of Things, connected machines can also be important for waste collection. Just think about smart bins, smart trucks, coordinating in real time and basically enabling better collection of discarded e-waste in the city. Digital product passports, again, they enable traceability, which can also support collection, waste collection, and law enforcement. So law enforcement agencies can identify the status of the product by scanning, for example, the electronics, and then see if there are any illegal management practices taking place. Algorithms and AI can do extensive online search, web search, and identify potential illegal waste management practices in real life. And treatment of e-waste. Electronic data exchange, electronic notifications can simplify waste shipments, and that can subsequently support better treatment of e-waste management at designated recycling facilities. Digital product passports, digital tags, Internet of Things, coupled with blockchain can enable more secure exchange of information and can help, again, waste operators access information about the e-waste content, which can help to dismantle it, to treat it properly. AI can help with sorting of e-waste and dismantling via image recognition. Robots can help sort out and dismantle e-waste too. Digital twin technology and sensors can just make the entire process more efficient, because the devices will communicate between each other. That can also help learn throughout the process on how to make these processes even more efficient. And online platforms, again, you can have an exchange of information between different stakeholders. Again, I would highlight the importance of waste operators having access to information about the content of the products, which can help to dismantle it, repair it, treat it properly, among other benefits. Now, this is taking place. There are already ongoing developments. There are cases that you can look at in the paper. There are some prospective solutions like digital product passports that are yet to be fully scaled up and developed. And here I list some key challenges, but it's elaborated more in the paper. So one, of course, important challenge is how to enable information transfer while accounting for data protection concerns, so be it business sensitive data, personal data, and so forth. And this remains the challenge, how to square this circle. This must be done, but it's, of course, easier said than done. Digital technologies are yet to be developed to match their full capacity. So, for example, robotics, artificial intelligence, these tools are there, they are developed, they're being used in e-waste management, but they can be become even more sophisticated, even more advanced than they currently are. There are limitations to digital, and this is just to illustrate, digital product passports can't be really applied to existing e-waste. So this is more for future electronics rather than what we already have, and there is a lot of historical e-waste waiting to be collected and treated. Industry, consumers, waste operators often lack skills or motivation, understanding how digitalization can actually improve handling, enhance handling of electronics and management of e-waste. Electronics is complex in terms of size, lifespan, content, it varies. Therefore, there is no uniform single solution in terms of digitalization. It needs to be customized with regard to specific sub-waste streams of electronics. Digitalization is costly. So think of small enterprises, small recyclers. It's very difficult to talk to them about investing in digital infrastructure like smart bins, robotics, and AI, and also depending on the regions where they are operating in. And then an interesting point we also noted during the project, currently our e-waste market in the EU is fragmented. And this is linked to suboptimal digitalization because it prevents economy of scale. Recyclers don't have necessarily enough supply of e-waste, or it's not predictable. Therefore, they would be hesitant to make heavy investments into digitalization if they don't have enough e-waste to treat and then to recover, to actually to justify these investments. So yeah, these are the challenges, but yeah, this is something to work on further. And the paper provides a more like elaborated overview of the current policy framework, especially at the EU level. But here I just wanted to list some key policy recommendations for the way forward. So we need to think big. We need to have a more like a broader vision. And what we suggest is to try to aim to make a circular value chain for e-waste in the EU, to make it circular by 2030. So 10 years, no stress, but I mean, it has to be done, and it's good to keep a bit more ambitious targets, but also to try to establish this circular e-waste management system at the global level by mid-21st century, and the EU can lead the way. It's important to use regulation and soft law to improve data management, to develop rules for better data management, data sharing, information transfer. And here, of course, I think about data spaces that are currently being developed by the Commission in collaboration with other stakeholders. These needs to really be developed to be actionable, really functional, and while accounting for data protection. And that's of course easier said than done, but that's the very important thing to keep in mind. And the rules on digital product passports, of course, which are to be also further developed. Financial instruments can help a lot to help digitalize e-waste management, to make it more circular, and especially Digital Euro Program, Horizon Euro Program, building on good practices from the previous MFF. But also there can be other instruments can play a role, structural funds, for example, and these are again more explained further in detail in the paper itself. But there is a big role to invest, for the EU to invest to make this transition happen. Then to establish single market for e-waste is important. That means to standardize e-waste management practices across the Union, and of course to digitalize e-waste shipments to make it easier to also identify potential fraudulent behavior, but to facilitate the shipments of e-waste when this can support circular economy, and that can support digitalization, which can make e-waste management even more circular. So basically that's the logic behind. And then we need to use digital tools to improve relevant policies themselves. And here I highlight law enforcement, because we have a strong informal waste management sector. This needs to be matched by strong law enforcement. Digitalization can help with this. So this is something to definitely keep in mind. So to summarize, if we start with the circular electronics life cycle, we have production, use phase, end of life phase. We need circular practices to keep this process circular. And we need digital tools to support circular practices for circular electronics life cycle. And then here we list different tools that can help in different stages of the life cycle. However, we need policy interventions also to create an enabling framework to support digital tools for circular economy and circular electronics. We shouldn't forget about the fact that digitalization is not a silver bullet, and these tools can also support circular economy directly, not only via digitalization. So it's a twofold purpose. And digital can support policy making, improve our policies, as mentioned before. This is for the production phase, same for the use phase, and same for the end of life phase, of course, customized properly. So this is how we see the whole transition, and hopefully it makes it a bit easier to follow. But of course, it's a complex process, and definitely a long way to go. So yeah, hope this information is useful, and more you can find definitely more in the paper. But I'm happy to discuss further and to answer any questions you have at the moment. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Stefan, for providing this comprehensive overview. And just for our audience, we'll be returning back to you if you have any questions of clarification, etc., after all of our speakers have spoken. But I want to move on to our next speaker, who's Pascal Leroy, Director General at WEEE Forum. And we heard from Stefan that this is a very complex challenge. At the same time, digitalization can offer very interesting opportunities. What kind of thoughts do these findings create? What kind of reflections do you have on the basis of these findings? Thank you.
Thank you, Annika, for inviting us, and Stefan. And we fully endorse the findings of your research. I think they really echo the many things that we have been saying at the WEEE Forum for many years, because the reality is, and I think Stefan alluded to it in his introduction, every single year at the global level, 54 million tons of e-waste arise every year. and it just goes up and up and up. And there's no tipping point in sight. Basically, the United Nations estimates that it will reach 74 million tons by the year 2030. And this represents, of course, a huge store of value that remains untapped if you don't recycle it properly. And even in Europe, there's still a huge scope for improvement. Let me just underline that the European Union, for the people who are less familiar with e-waste legislation, actually this year we celebrated the 20th anniversary of European EPR legislation, extended producer responsibility. And we have made huge progress. The collection rate has gone up, no doubt about it. Also, we have seen new recycling technologies. We recycle a lot better than 20 years ago. There's also much better registration, reporting. But despite all this, we see that only 55%, and these are recent figures. We commissioned a study with UNITAR, United Nations body, last year, and only 55% of e-waste is properly reported to the authorities in Europe. 55%, meaning that, and then there's 25% that goes into other flows. So the mixed waste flows, as we say, metal scrap and other waste flows, and 25% remains unknown. So despite the fact that we have had legislation for 20 years, there's still a huge scope for improvement. And Stefan said it correctly, that there's environmental harm, of course. The fact that 1 out of 7 devices in the home is not used or is broken, and so it's potential that is not tapped. These materials have been mined, they're sitting in a product, and they don't return into the system. And the same for critical raw materials, because that's a special category. Let's say they are raw materials that are critical for the new economy, for the transition to the green economy. However, the supply of these materials is risky. So we call them, the European Union calls them critical raw materials. And so, in other words, there remains a huge scope for improvement. For example, there's at European level also legislation concerning conflict minerals. Where do the minerals come from? They might be coming from areas where there is war, for example. There's also no way to know if the product is actually complying with legislation. Stefan alluded to it, that when it comes to shipments of waste, there's no electronic notification. And the other day I was dialing into a conference of the United Nations framework, and I was quite surprised to hear that there is no electronic notification whatsoever. Everything is still based on paper. And this is really surprising. So this is, in my opinion, this is a lost opportunity. And as I said, there's no data on WEEE flows, or very little. You have to do really specific studies to understand what's going on in the market. And so also when it comes to treatment, you can clearly see that we have made progress, but at the same time, products have become smaller and smaller and smaller. They use different plastics. It's more and more difficult to recover the materials and the metals. And it's just very difficult. And so that is the reason why, and at the same time, of course, you have this legal framework where of the European Union that says Green Deal, the Circular Economy Action Plan, that says we should strive towards, let's say, a circular economy. We should make efforts to go from linear to circular economy. And against that background, I think digitalization should be an enabler. So we are fully in favor of a digitally enabled circular value chains. And the case for digitalization is on many different levels. It's not just for, well, let's start with the collection. Some of the PROs, some of the producer responsibility organizations in the WEEE Forum already implement robotics, machine learning, artificial intelligence to better know what products are coming back, and to better sort the different types of electronic waste. And so one of the PROs in the WEEE Forum is doing this on the basis of more than 1 million images of products, and robotics, machine learning is a support for this thing, and it allows the PRO to understand better which materials are sitting in the products, how many products are coming back. So it's also a help for producers. And so you can go to every segment of the value chain and see that there is actually, that it is quite something with something useful. For example, also enforcement could be improved if you allow for digital solutions. I can imagine that inspection could be improved and enforcement. Also, better logistics, for example, this is also in the EPC report that if you have smart bins, for example, smart logistics, so you optimize the whole system. And of course, it would also help in identifying the different flows in WEEE. And of course, so that's the case for digitalization, but of course there remain challenges. For example, as Stefan explained, you can't implement digital solutions to e-waste that is arising now. I mean, they have been put on, they come from products put on the market in the past, and so it's you can't implement it on new products. Data protection, of course, remains an issue, and we have to be cautious in implementing these schemes. I think the solution, but other speakers will allude to that, I think, today, but I think the solution is to make sure that producers can still remain owner of the data about the materials and the products. So these are the challenges, but let's say nothing prevents the European Union in its Sustainable Products Initiative, and here I'm addressing to William Neale, in the Sustainable Products Initiative to be published in December. Nothing prevents the EU to say, let's focus on one sector, or let's focus on business to business, for example, which because you know, you have this situation in the batteries regulation. So the European Commission proposes to already introduce a digital product passport for large batteries by 2027, that you should be able to say what's the content in a battery. So why not single out certain categories or business to business? You give ample time, and so you do this gradually. There's no one says that you have to do this full scale, comprehensive, and at all different levels of detail. So that would be my proposition, and all this should be embedded, of course, but I'm sure that William will zoom in on this point, should be embedded into a robust legal framework. And I think I will keep it to this, Annika, if you agree.
Thank you, Pascal, for your reflections. That's very helpful. And as you already noted, that indeed we have William Neale here joining us, who's an advisor for circular economy and green growth at DG Environment, European Commission. I'll be happy to give William the floor to you next to tell us what were your thoughts on the findings of our report, and can you especially tell a bit more about what the EU is doing at the moment and could do to facilitate the use of data and digital solutions in enabling more circular electronics as well as better e-waste management. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Annika. I'll try and do that. It's a very wide-ranging report, and there's a lot of policy that we're already trying to implement, which is very relevant. So in the time we have, I'll try and be brief, but so much is already included in the report, which helps me a lot. And I have to congratulate you and Stefan and the team for an excellent set of recommendations, very well backed up, and also very good timing. I think EPC once again is very much in step with the policy developments and is providing this at a very useful time. On the one hand, I think the report's quite reassuring because I think we're trying to do a lot of the right things, but it really shows a lot of the challenges that are still up there. As you know, we have in the van der Leyen Commission emphasized the idea of a green and digital twin transition, and the mutual potential of the green and the digital is huge, but we are speaking two different languages. It's two different worlds. We've only come together relatively recently. I've been talking to my neighbors in DG Connect for a couple of years. And I think that the work of EPC is very important in trying to sort of curate that discussion and try and eliminate some of the misunderstandings and really focus on what is important and guide people through that. I think there's so much going on that, and I think the report already encapsulates a lot of that. I think one of the main messages I would have in the report, where I slightly disagree, which is on the one hand, the consumer electronics and data centers and so on have a huge environmental impact. We talk about 2% of carbon emissions and equivalent to air traffic and so on, but also that there is a great enabling potential. And the report says that the jury is out on that potential. I would say the jury is out in that it's not really measured, but I think that the important message is really that digital technologies can enable linear and non-sustainable consumption and production just as easily as it can enable circularity. It can enable acceleration, in the unsustainable direction. So I think that what is clear is that the potential for enabling is vastly superior to the impact of digital technologies, but that we have to harness those technologies, and that's where the policy framework is so important and needs to be clear. So I'll try and focus a little bit in turn on the different recommendations that you've made. As I say, the report is very comprehensive, and there's a lot of good analysis in there, and there are a lot more experts around the table here today on a lot of those individual things, so I won't go into a lot of detail. On the first, which is about the circular value chain in Europe and globally, and about involving stakeholders, Stefan was saying no stress 10 years, but I remember in 2012 I was in the cabinet of the commissioner at the time responsible for the file on the WEEE review, and we put in some quite challenging quite ambitious targets there, and as Pascal has just said, we're still not quite there. I mean, we're sort of about 50% in Europe, where we were talking about 85% of generated waste by 2019. So I mean, a lot of it has to do with how you do it, and not the targets that you set, but it's good to have a clear vision and strategic targets. So just to say that the Circular Economy Action Plan includes, as one of the key value chains, the Circular Electronics Initiative, and this, I think, it's moving environment policy away from sort of punishing polluters approach, targets, and punishing member states that don't achieve them, and so on, to a systemic value chain approach. And we did that with the plastic strategy, and that really showed what can be achieved by trying to address all of those different parts of the chain. And the objectives that we have in the Circular Electronics Initiative are to, firstly, avoid obsolescence, secondly, to reduce waste, and thirdly, to extend the lifetime of electronic devices. But I think it's important that it isn't just seen as a sort of a package of a few things that we're going to do anyway, but it has to have that strategic vision. And as was said, we intend to come up with that later this year. DG Connect is in the lead, but DG Environment and DG Justice are also very much involved in some of the deliverables in there. If we're talking about things like the Sustainable Products Initiative, DG Grow and DG Environment are very much leading on that with other DGs. If we're talking about things like right to repair and green claims, right to repair is very much a part of the Circular Electronics Initiative, which DG Justice is in the lead on. We're in the lead in DG Environment on the take-back schemes for waste electronics and electrical equipment, and of course on the management of that legislation. So it's very much a joint approach. I think I mentioned the move from sort of punishing polluters and legislative approach to a more strategic approach to value chains, but I think the other really groundbreaking development in this Circular Economy Action Plan is the focus on products. For the first time, I think, anywhere, we're using single market legislation to achieve environmental ends. Okay, we've been using eco-design for energy using products in terms of their energy performance and so on, but we're talking about expanding the use of the eco-design directive to a far wider gamut of sustainability criteria, and using it for that, and making sure that we keep the worst things off the market. And very much related to that is a digital product passport, and I see it's kind of in a lot of places in the report, and Stefan was in his visuals was putting it in quite a lot of places. I mean, I would agree that there isn't a single silver bullet, but and this is maybe fairly close to one which hits quite a lot of the different kinds of approaches and initiatives that we need, because it enables data to be attached to a product as it travels through that entire chain. So obviously for recyclers, it's like, what substances and materials, chemicals are in a product and how it can be dismantled better and so on. But as Pascal said, all of the business-to-business possibilities are huge in that. Basically, what we're talking about is an identifier on every product, and linked to that, literally, agreement on access to certain pieces of data. And this data can be distributed. It doesn't have to. It's not actually on the product, but it's an agreement or an obligation to make certain data available, which is useful along the chain. Now, just to address something where I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding here in the report and in what I've heard today, is on the voluntary or the obligatory nature of this. There are quite a lot of product passports as such being implemented already. Circularise, who will speak later, are involved in many of these. We've got the Global Batteries Alliance. We've got Aeon for textiles. In many areas, there are things afoot, which I think illustrates the innate value of value retention. I mean, that so much of a product's value is in the data which is attached to it now. And if you lose that data on the chain, you lose the value. Circular economy is about value retention. So the more data you keep with the product, the more value retention options you have later on. And we see it with electric vehicle batteries and so on. So there is a business case, and business is driving a lot of what is already happening because the technology is there. The technology isn't the problem. Where I think that we can come in as a regulator is to, on the first hand, that's our convening power, so we can get everybody around the table to talk about what data needs to be made available further along the line. But also, we have the power to enforce that, to make it obligatory. We're using single market legislation, and I don't think that there will be it's not a heavy-handed thing, but there will be cases where what would happen at on a voluntary basis won't happen. And there's a lot that won't happen on a voluntary basis, what I'm trying to say. So if we can get people around the table, and if there are things that are really in the public interest, ensure that those are that data is made available. Very much linked to that is the Data Act, and I'm very pleased to see that this is very much included in the report as well. I think it's fundamental, and I think that what we're trying to achieve is very much in line and very much dependent on the approach of the Data Act. This is addressed in the sort of rules and standards for data management, which you have in your report. There are several aims of the Data Act, which is now, I think, going into impact assessment, and I guess is on the cards in the next few months. Amongst those objectives is making data in the EU more usable for sustainable growth, increasing certainty for business and consumers, incentivizing data generation, fairness in data sharing. But I think maybe one of the most important is that it aims to facilitate the use of commercially held data for specific public interest purposes. And another objective is interoperability. So you can see that this is very much related to what we're trying to do with the digital product passport, and really to try and get that balance between not having a surveillance approach to data, not having a sort of laissez-faire, let's give it all to the tech giants approach, but something which is keeping data control in the right hands. I'm very aware of time, so I'll just nip through a couple of other things which are mentioned in the report. On the financing side of digital technologies, as the report says, and as Stefan has said, that much is already being done in Horizon, and the report gives quite a few good examples. The Digital Europe programme brings in another 7.6 billion euros over the coming years. That was adopted last April, and I think that we'll see the first work programs coming in soon. And you will see support for data spaces and for the digital product passport piloting in there. Also, the recovery and resilience plans, I think these illustrated that a lot of the narrative about circularity and about digital is not necessarily that easy to achieve when it comes to coming up with a very, just in the space of a few weeks and months, an investment plan. And I think member states are struggling there, particularly with the links between green and digital, and we need to help them in the implementation phase. On standards, work is going on. I mean, we have ISO 323 is working on standards for data fact sheets with the Luxembourg Economics Ministry, which is already trying to implement a kind of digital product passport. We have a study group on circular economy under the multi-stakeholder platform and ICT standardization, which has come up with a report recently looking at the relevant standards. And we have other things like green public procurement, which is setting standards. That your report actually says that there aren't so many standards related to digital, but I would disagree rather. I mean, this year we've come up with a green public procurement criteria for computers, monitors, tablets, and smartphones. Last year we came up with one for data centers. So, okay, there's still quite a lot to do, but I think we are working there. And then I think a very important thing, which has opened my eyes a lot, has been the taxonomy process. And there we're working on circular economy technical screening criteria for, what is a substantial contribution to sustainability. And in there we have, and I think the public consultation is just closed, so you're just too late if you haven't already replied. But we have, we've addressed activities of manufacturing of electronics, electrical goods there, but also enabling. And that's been difficult. I have to say, it's worth looking at. I think, as I said at the beginning, you can use these technologies to enable linear, unsustainable growth as much as you can circularity. And when you're talking about setting criteria for, what is really green and should be financed in terms of enabling technologies, they could be used for other things. So it's very difficult to tie it in sort of ex ante into what it's going to be used for afterwards. Single market for e-waste, and I'll wrap up quickly, Annika, because I know that we have other speakers waiting. Single market for e-waste, I'd just say that, of course, we have our waste shipment regulation under review at the moment, which is working on the intra-EU side of, trying to make sure that there's a single market for waste and there are markets of circular materials. The extra EU side of it, which is trying to sort of reduce the exports of that waste, make sure we're complying with the OECD Basel side, and also reduce the illegal shipments. And data is central to all of those aspects. We need to get rid of or reduce the paper-based approach, ensure there's more harmonization and interoperability. And I think the challenge there will more be getting that through the co-decision procedure without it, being gone to bits, because member states are obviously at very different stages, and that will be difficult. And then for enforcement, I'll just remind, I don't know if it's mentioned in the report, but the INSPIRE directive, which in 2007 really set out the how we should achieve interoperability and data sharing for policy implementation through a kind of spatial infrastructure for environment. But I'll leave it there. I'm happy to come back and I'll elaborate on any of those issues. But as I say, I think that a common thread running through this is the importance of being able to attach data to products as they go through the system. And I think that is very relevant for many of the different suggestions and recommendations which are in the EPC report.
Thank you, William. Thank you so much for providing to a very complex question and challenge such a great overview of responses to what you're doing, what is in the pipeline, and obviously it's a very exciting times to discuss the issue and taking all the work that is being currently done in the European Commission, and especially on the digital product passports, and certainly an area to be further discussed. And let's see how much time we'll have also in the discussion itself to go back to some of these ideas. I'll now turn. We have a number of additional speakers who will be joining us, providing us very short reactions and comments and reflections. And I would invite all of you, Bruno, Jean-Pierre, Laurent, Teresa, if you wish to join us. As Teresa had already her video on, I will turn to Teresa Oberhauser first You're the EU project lead at the Circularise. Circularise was already mentioned as having good examples on working on sharing of information. And it would be great on the basis of your experience as well to hear what are your thoughts, reflections, also on the findings of our report. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very, very much for inviting me to this great opportunity. And indeed, I will not talk about it long. I just want to put some visuals on the screen as we have had, I don't know if you can see it. As we have talked about this in a bit as well, but we indeed are already at Circularise working on these issues. We have a digital twin system, which is basically doing those kind of decentralized blockchain-based material transactions, and now also looking more into tracking production information, so we can also check the boxes of all the information that's needed for LCAs and other related processes, and basically visualizations, and basically an web app for stakeholders in the supply chain to basically talk about that kind of information in a safe and secure way between each other, with basically a path-dependent solution, smart questioning, that allows the possibility to share as much data as possible while it's really stored locally and decentrally. I also don't want to show much more of those. I actually wanted to react to what William has said, and also what Stefan has said earlier. It is amazing to hear those kind of conversations, to really read the report. Circularise is 5 years old. When we started 5 years ago, there was no understanding of the situation as such, what blockchain can do in that field, of course, but also basically the importance of that. Companies have been researching circular economy and supply chain transparency for many, many years, but as you know, circular economy activities is an investment. There has to be money put on the table to make those adjustments in the supply chain. It is not for free. So therefore, it is really important, as many of our customers also constantly point out, that we have clear regulations, a clear mandate coming from the European Union on those issues, so companies really can take those drawing maps that they've been having for many years already out of the drawer and really implement them. Circularise is a small company, so obviously, of course, we believe in what we do. We wouldn't be where we are as a startup if we wouldn't trust that this is the right way to go. But nevertheless, such a system is not something that can rely on shoulders of a small company, and at the same time, it should also, as William has pointed out, not be lying on the shoulders of one or two big tech giants that handle that kind of data. That's why it is so important what was said about interoperability of communication protocols, that no matter which kind of supplier, if it's Circularise, a company X, Y, Z you're using, you can communicate with each other no matter which system you use, just like with email. And same thing, data security. We're even working within the building sector as well now, where products and actually buildings have such a long lifetime. So we really need to make sure the data is not hackable, that data management is possible in the way where really the sensitive data of material recipes, of supplier selection, which is the core business model of companies, is protected. That's why it's so important to use honestly bulky technologies like blockchain, because it is bulky, but is what we have right now to make such things work. And therefore we need really ambitious regulations that hold companies accountable, and that also give them a clear way to plan ahead, because that is currently what we hear most as the most important threshold, to really be able to plan ahead, to have clear regulations of this is where we have to go, and then they can and they will. Another point that I still wanted to quickly still make towards you, William, next to my work at Circularise, I'm also volunteering as a youth environment advocate toward the United Nations Environmental Program, and we have huge negotiations upcoming this year. We have the United Nations Environment Assembly in February. We have Stockholm +50 conference in June. Both of those are tackling sustainable consumption and production, marine litter and microplastics, and also something about mining and raw materials. So we would really like to also see the European Union leading in those global negotiations and really putting the great progress that is happening here forth, and really making sure that this is something that is globally spanning, and ideally not by 2030, but much, much, much earlier. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Teresa, for sharing some of the insights from Circularise, and also for this call for action. So we'll come back to this in the discussion. I'll then turn to Bruno Vermoesen, Chairman of the Board of Directors for Recupel and Head of Office for Governmental Affairs for Circular Economy at BSH Home Appliances Group. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Yeah, just to explain who BSH is. BSH is a manufacturer of household appliances under the brands Bosch and Siemens. Thank you for having me on this panel here. Circular value chains are, of course, very important. And if we talk about circular economy, we are talking about avoiding primary raw materials. We are talking about prolonging lifetime and closing material loops. And in order to do that, you need access to data about the products that you are placing on the market. Yeah, you have to know components, materials, substances, but not only that, it's also key to have information on the usage of the appliance and the maintenance, the repair actions which have been performed on the product. And all that information will, of course, allow for more targeted decisions that can then be taken at products end of life, but not only at end of life, also during the usage period of the appliance. With respect to repair, with respect to refurbishment, with respect to preparation for reuse, for example. And BSH have developed several systems which already now allow for data gathering during the entire use phase of the product. We have Home Connect, which is a functionality that connects home appliances to the internet. We have a system that we call internally System Master, allows, let's say, to collect data about the real usage of our products over the entire lifetime. And that can deliver valuable data for example, predictive maintenance, which can avoid that appliances break down, for repair, for reuse, for preparation for reuse, and for recycling. It also allows already today for remote diagnosing. If people have problems with their appliances, our service department can connect, if the user allows it, of course, to the appliance to read out the information about the appliance and can help then already now to even do remote repair if no spare parts are needed, for example. And by doing so, we can more accurately decide between lifetime prolongation, through repair and so on, spare parts harvesting, for example, before we even throw appliances for recycling, we can harvest spare parts, and harvesting spare parts again contributes to an extension of the lifetime of another similar product, for example, and recycling. So it allows us to more adequately decide. The information that we gather with these systems allow us, furthermore, to better understand the user behavior, how the user works with our products. And also this gives us valuable information back, again, if the user allows to do so, for the development of future generations of products. Because we understand better the needs of the user of our appliances, and we can shape our products accordingly. And we also can interpret that data in order to improve, let's say, the repairability of our appliances and even the durability of our appliances. And we are enrolling these systems in more and more products of the BSH product portfolio, with the goal, of course, to have them in all our products. Yeah? But that will, of course, take some time. Other systems we already have since many years, because we are talking about digital solutions. A tool like QuickFinder, for example, is an online tool which is accessible to everybody, where we display or where we make available all the exploded views of all our appliances and where all the spare parts can be ordered online by everybody. Yeah, and this is something that is existing since many years. For professionals, of course, we do the same and we go even beyond. We make available extensive repair instructions, tutorials, and videos available over portals like TradePlace, for example, in order for them to more easily repair our products, which again contributes to the lifetime extension of our products. But technology and data gathering systems have their limits, I think. For example, at the end of life phase, unfortunately today, even if we would have a very good digital product passport and if we would make available the data, all the appliances are collected, they are mixed together, and then they go to a recycling facility. And modern recycling facilities, they treat the appliance in an automated way. They don't have the time to look at every single appliance, to look up which information is now relevant for that appliance in order for a more, let's say, targeted dismantling and getting access to focused materials or components. They simply do not have the time. All the appliances are being treated in a shredder, and then afterwards we are trying to sort out the different secondary raw materials out of that process. So this is still a situation where even if all the data is available, there is a need for change. Yeah, it's the situation today. It doesn't necessarily have to be the situation of tomorrow, but that is a huge challenge, I think, for us as manufacturers, but also for recyclers who would have to develop new technologies in order to adapt to that potentially a huge mass of data that will be available and that can contribute, let's say, to the circular economy. Another issue that I see with the digital product passport, and it's not a criticism, it's just a reality, it's just a fact. If we would want to create a digital twin, that would mean that everybody over the course of the life cycle of the product that would intervene on the product would have to feed into the system. Yeah, like a repairer that performs a repair on a product would then have to feed into the system what was the cause of the problem, which part did he change, how many time did he take to repair it, what are other actions that he had taken, cleaned other components or whatever. All that would have to be registered in that product database. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but I'm saying again that it's very, very challenging, as many stakeholders over the life cycle of a product will interact with that product and would have to feed in all that information to the system. A serious challenge which we will need to cope with. So as you hear me speak, I think that I can say that the Digital Product Passport initiative that the Commission has taken is an initiative that in principle we can support, because we are convinced that it will help us to contribute to more circularity and to a better circular economy. But the content should be developed according to the real needs of the stakeholders. Yeah, we should not make a database with a lot of information just for the sake of having the information. No, the information should be there for a purpose. And we need to identify the stakeholders, and we need to identify what information all these stakeholders need. And this information should or could be in such a database. And a lot of this information is already available in existing databases. I'm talking about the SCIP database. I'm talking about the April database. I'm talking about the I4R platform. It's already there. So we could easily come to a digital product passport, if we call it like this, with already readily available information, if we intelligently link all that information together. And then to come back on what Pascal said before, other systems which we have developed with the Belgian PRO, Recupel, we are since a few years focusing on artificial intelligence. And like Pascal said, we are further developing together with the University of Antwerp and IMEC this technology, let's say, in a first instance, to help us identify which products are in the waste stream. Yeah, because we know what we are placing on the market, because we declare as producers to the system what we are placing on the market, but actually we don't know what comes back, because it's in containers, it's in pallet boxes, everything is mixed, and we need to know exactly what comes back. So we have developed a system supported by artificial intelligence, like Pascal said, with millions of images, and it's an image recognition system that with cameras can identify in a stream of e-waste that is going through a tunnel what products are going through that tunnel. Yeah, so we know much better which products are actually coming back. That helps us, of course, as a PRO in the cost allocation. Yeah, we know better how to calculate or to allocate the costs to the different product categories. And we are now in the verge of further developing that system with artificial intelligence to go a step beyond that, yeah? Like detecting the presence of batteries, detecting the presence of hazardous substances, and then sorting out the appliances accordingly in order to treat them in a more appropriate way, in order, of course, to reduce the environmental impact, the risk for the workers that are standing besides the line, and the risk for the recycling facilities, of course, and to increase the quality of recycling. So a few examples of, and then a few considerations about the digital product passport. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bruno. And it's great to hear the concrete examples and also the challenges and considerations that you have. I think that it's appreciated by many of our listeners today. I'll then turn to Laurent Hellebaut, Chair of Waste Task Force and EU Affairs Coordinator at Orgalim, as well as a Senior Expert in Environment at AGORIA. Be very happy to hear your thoughts and reflections. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank the EPC for the organization of this policy dialogue and for having invited Orgalim. Orgalim represents Europe's technology industries, and these industries are providing technology solutions which are supporting the twin green and digital transitions. And so we, of course, very much support the digitalization as enabling technology for a circular economy. I would like perhaps to make two comments regarding the prospects and challenges of digital solutions to enhance e-waste management. I think that the prospects are, or at least should be, broadly positive, because as mentioned during this dialogue and also in the EPC's discussion paper, various digital-based initiatives and projects are popping up across Europe in order to enable prevention measures, to ease collection and sorting, or to improve treatment processes. And of course, the maturity of all these initiatives differs, of course. Some are already good practices, while others are only pilot projects. But I think that most of these projects are led by actors or developed with actors belonging to a sort of European e-waste ecosystem, from producers to recyclers. And so I think that the existence of this quite strong European value chain should certainly help to connect the dots and to scale up digital-based projects. So again, I think that the prospects are quite positive. And of course, as rightly mentioned also in the EPC report, challenges have to be addressed. There are, of course, concerns over data protection. E-waste is a complex flow. The European e-waste market is fragmented, etc., etc. And some of these challenges are directly linked to the design of the upcoming digital product passport, of course. And Orgalim thinks that the DPP could have benefits and can be an opportunity if properly designed, of course, according to some key principles. I just want to mention here two main principles. First of all, we need a strong impact assessment to ensure that the implementation of the DDP will be workable and will effectively contribute to a circular economy. And the second comment, well, I think that an effective enforcement and market surveillance will be, of course, very important to ensure a level playing field. But and to perhaps to briefly conclude, in the end, I think that the overall main challenge, in my view, will be to offer the producers a framework to develop as freely as possible their own circular business models, enhanced by digital solutions in order to achieve the EU sustainability goals. Voilà, that's it.
Thank you so much. This is very, very helpful, and I think that we're starting to have a lot of elements for the discussion. But before I open the floor for our rest of our participants to join in with possible questions, I'll hand over to Pierre Schweitzer, who is a Senior Policy Officer for Circular Economy and Product Policy at European Environmental Bureau. The floor is yours.
Annika. Firstly, I just congratulate Stefan along with the others on the paper. It's very good, lots of positive examples. Just to really give a reaction, want to pick up, I'm glad William picked up on it because there's one quote in the paper which stands out for me, maybe have a different perspective to William slightly, and that is the jury is still out on the exact balance between the benefits versus the risks of digital transformation for climate and environmental protection. And I wish that the digital sector was working as positively towards circular economy and climate protection as Stefan demonstrates as possible in his paper, because I think we need a bit of a reality check, because in fact the dominant applications of digitalization today are not really supporting environmental protection at all. Even so, we have quite stable energy use from the digital or ICT sector. The reality is that if you look at embedded emissions and impacts across digital sectors, the impacts are growing. There was a report out recently from the JRC about energy use in the ICT sector. I think it showed that 85% of the bandwidth from European data centers was just going to video on demand, social media clips, and game streaming. I also think there's a lot of reference to AI and big data in the paper. And when we really look at what the applications of AI and big data are today, it's personalized advertising, which drives consumption in sectors such as fast fashion. And I know work is starting on this in the Commission's work on products, but this is the reality. If we think about Internet of Things, you just have to go onto the Amazon's website today and see what the top selling products are in the electronics sector. It's connected smart watches, smart speakers, smart doorbells. And I think if you really look at these kind of product groups, they're more destined to becoming e-waste than actually enabling the circular economy. The biggest application of blockchain today is a currency which has an e-waste footprint and a carbon footprint which is equivalent to some European member states. So this is just a bit of a bleak reality check, which I think needs to be said. The second point I wanted to make was more about the policy framework, where I think there are great recommendations in the report. And it's a point which William picked up on as well. What we do miss a little bit is actually a methodology to really understand what the environmental footprint of the digital sector is. And this is missing, and we don't have this yet. So it's a bit premature, I think, to say, okay, we have all these enabling opportunities. Of course, we should pursue them, but there is still an element of doubt. And I think there are promising actions being developed by the Commission, like the ambition to make data centers carbon neutral by 2030. This is ambitious, but the reality is this only covers 17% of the energy use from ICT and probably much less in terms of emissions. The forthcoming legislation on smartphones and laptops, which we discussed before the meeting today, is very welcome, and on batteries as well, of course. But there are many electronic products which will not be covered, and it's unclear if they will be covered in the future because they're not going to be targeted within eco-design. So I'm curious about how we can cover all these new kind of connected devices which are going to be on the market very soon. I think just to end with a final comment, I really think we need a framework to assess the overall material and carbon footprint from digital technology and set pathways to reduce this. This is really critically missing. I welcomed Stefan's comment to make the e-waste fully circular value chain by 2030. I'd be interested to know more about what this means in practice. I think it sounds ambitious and interesting. And more so interested in the digital product passport concept. I'm curious about how this can contribute to enabling public access to the environmental impact of products. So curious to know more about what the Commission have in mind there. Thanks, and thanks again for the really good work on the paper and everyone's input today.
Thank you so much. Now, I did promise to our participants that if you have questions, I'll turn on to you. I will turn over to you. Just do indicate either that if you wish to speak orally or write your question in the Q&A box. So I'll be happy to pick on those. But before I do that, as there's been a lot of input, Stefan, I want to turn first to you and obviously then also to Pascal and William. If you have any additional reactions, comments to what you've heard. Stefan, I'll start with you.
Thanks, Annika. Really would like to thank all the speakers for providing this feedback and their additional inputs. It's something that's very important to reflect upon and can also be very useful for our further work, because we indeed would like to continue working on the twin transition related topics. This is we will definitely have follow-up project activities and research in this regard. So I believe we are basically on the same page. We simply need to make it happen. On greening ICT, maybe just to add on that, indeed, the focus of the paper, the project was on digitalization as an enabler, but doesn't mean that, of course, that the other side of the coin, greening ICT, should be neglected. Far from that, it's very important. Now, what are the pros and cons? I would say it's hard to say, but I'm close to the opinion that the potentials of digitalization, do outweigh the potential negative effects. But as William pointed out, but then as Jean-Pierre mentioned, it doesn't mean a lot if these don't materialize. And arguably, these won't materialize spontaneously without policy intervention. So we need a deliberate action from the policymakers themselves to actually reap the benefits of digitalization and minimize negative side effects in this regard. I would try to move within this, basically that would be a position I would hold at this point. And lots of challenges, including digital product passports and how to make it happen, especially to introduce digital twins. It's a long way ahead. I mean, important to have really ambitious, to think big, have ambitious targets to the EU and the global level. Maybe one thing to add, also we talked about different policies and digital legislation, digital product passports. I would say that it's important to also to try to link digital with extended producer responsibility, and to try to see how extended producer responsibility can also be improved with the help of digital, because it's one of the most important instruments introduced for the e-waste management. And I wouldn't go now into the assessing the performance of the EPR, but arguably digital can help a lot, and it can be used as an instrument to digitalize e-waste management on top of the eco-design itself. So that's something just to highlight, and achieving circular e-waste management value chain by 2030. Yeah, we can talk about it exactly how we can define this target, but at least not to landfill it, not to incinerate it, and to have all the e-waste in the official waste management collection systems, not to end up in illegal or informal waste management systems in this kind. I mean, we can discuss more about it, of course, but at least that's something that I would consider to be circular, notwithstanding preventing e-waste from occurring in the first place. Of course, in a nutshell, I'm happy, of course, to reflect more if there is time.
Thank you. I'll turn over to Pascal. Would you have any comments, thoughts?
Yes, I mean, the first thing that strikes me is that everyone has said that we should pursue the opportunities related to digital solutions and the circular economy. I think that's very encouraging to hear. Secondly, let's say that I also agree that the European Union should position itself, or let's say should have the ambition to become the leader in terms of becoming, to strive for a digital circular economy. I think that's absolutely, because Europe is already, I think we as Europeans, we underestimate that, but we are already a leader. At least we are perceived as a leader when it comes to the climate change and the whole environmental agenda. So I think that's also something that we should reinforce in the coming years. what Jean-Pierre Schweitzer said is also true in the sense that we did a report with International Telecommunication Union, ITU, about what we called internet waste. So it's basically all the data centers, all the appliances and equipment that you need to make the mobile and the digital world possible. That we call this the invisible internet waste. This is actually an issue of concern. I mean, an issue of concern, it's something that we need to monitor, because you pick up a phone and all the data that is going on, uses all these equipment, and they are not visible to basically, and it's something that we need to be mindful of. And unfortunately, there's a lot going on. And actually, I was very pleased to hear all the initiatives that Bruno mentioned for just one company. I think that's very encouraging. And of course, responsible companies will have lots of things going on. But the thing is that there are also irresponsible companies out there, and Mickey Mouse companies. And these are the ones that we need to spot.
Thank you. William, would you have any thoughts that you would like to add here?
Yes, just a couple of reactions picking up on things which were said. I mean, just coming back to what Jean-Pierre was saying about the impacts. I mean, there's a lot of academic and other work being done on the impacts of ICT, of digital. And what I was trying to say is, I mean, I think that it's fairly clear what the negative impacts of the sector are, and it's very much to do with data centers, which is more of a climate impact and more energy related, and the impact of consumer electronic devices. But I think when it comes to the positive impact, it's really the enabling impact. It's a potential, so it can't be measured, because it's potentially enormous. But what I was saying is that just shows how important it is to have the right policy framework to harness that capacity, that potential in the right direction. So that's why I think that this whole process is very important. To say a little bit more about the digital product passport, I mean, Bruno was talking about information for a purpose. This is absolutely what it's about. And I think that Circularise and Global Batteries Alliance and all of these other examples show that there's a huge amount of voluntary data which can be made available, and that's all great. And our role, I think, is really to identify the most important data for circularity. And in our consultation process for the digital product passport, most companies have said to us, we don't mind giving away most data, making it accessible if we know it's for a really good purpose. And the process for doing that, as I said, the technology for the passport is not the problem. I think it's all there. It's happening already. It's the process and the governance of actually establishing what information, what data should be made accessible. And we don't plan to come up with a digital product passport, which is horizontal and going to apply to all product groups. It will have to be done on the basis of implementing acts for specific product groups and bringing everybody around the table for each product group. And because for textiles, it's going to be very different, for consumer electronics, which is going to be very different for building construction products. So we need to do it in that way. And we need to focus on, like we did in the batteries regulation, if you look in the annex, we made the data access obligations in 3 categories. B2B, where I think that the value retention possibilities are huge and the future business opportunities are huge. B2C, which as Jean-Pierre was mentioning, the possibilities of making more information available to consumers, but not just that. And I think the BEOC and Consumers Organization have been very worried that we're going to get rid of printed information on products. It's not about that. I think what is more important is the future ability to, through algorithms and so on, to be able to provide services to consumers to say that if you're more interested in climate than you are in child labor in your product, you could have a kind of algorithms which say, well, not that that's necessarily a choice that you have to make, but you'll be able to actually advise consumers as to which products they should be going for if they have particular preferences and what's important for them in terms of sustainability. So I think that for more sustainable consumption, it's not just about information to the consumer directly on the product, but the ability to provide services related to that data. And then there's business to government, B2G, where we're talking about regulation. And there, I think the EPR example is very interesting. If you look at the potential of digital product passport for EPR. On the one hand, okay, if you have machine optical readable identifiers on products as they're going along a conveyor belt at 2 meters a second, and you can link that to eco-modulated fees, then presumably that would make the whole system a lot easier in terms of making eco-modulation work. I'm no expert, but I would imagine that automating that would make it a lot more feasible. Secondly, on free riding, a lot of maybe what Pascal called Mickey Mouse companies are free riding on EPR schemes. They're not paying into the schemes as they're obliged to. Through digital product passports, presumably we could even have the obligation to have data on that saying which EPR scheme what PRO you're paying into for that product as it comes onto the European market. And so I think that the possibilities are really huge. I mean, I don't think we really know what they all are yet from this power of attaching data to products, as long as it's done, as Bruno said, on a information for a purpose basis, and also with the possibility of encrypting it, or making it available just to certain people or for a certain time. We're certainly not trying to sort of blow up and large amounts of intellectual property and privacy and all of those things. But I think that can be dealt with through this process, and it's the process we have to get right.
Thank you very much. And the fact that you have mentioned now the EPR, I do want to come and give a chance for the other speakers, should anyone wish to react and comment on the possibilities to improve EPR, the extended producer responsibility schemes. Happy if anyone wishes to come on that. Otherwise, I have one question from the audience, from Mukund Bhagwat, who's asking that how digitalization of metals recycling processing could help circular economy. And I would also put in one final question, and with the very limited time that we have, I'll try to come back to everyone who's interested to provide their reactions, but taking the international context. We saw that I have figures from 2016, perhaps there are figures that are newer, but at least in 2016, most of the e-waste was generated in Asia, while the EU has been actually better in collecting and sourcing its e-waste. So taking that this is actually a global challenge, what could the EU do to enhance international collaboration, enhancing collection and treatment of and using digitalization for this aim? We already, like the examples have shown, is that EU have, and in Europe, we have actually good examples of using digitalization for this aim. So could some of these lessons be also used beyond our borders, and how could we enhance collaboration on these? I'm very much aware of the time, so I would have to ask each of you to limit your final remarks to 1 minute. But if that's okay, I can start with Jean-Pierre, and we'll go in a reverse order.
Yeah, thanks, Annika. I think I would join William in believing in the strength of the single market and its potential to kind of have an influence on the products which are available outside of the EU. We've already seen how this works with eco-design, where the European CE marking is kind of something which is valued outside of the EU because it's a standard of quality. And I think this could take place for other product groups as well. But obviously there's a lot of potential for the EU to work overseas to develop circular economy capacity. And I think there are a number of initiatives already in place. But maybe just to come back to the point made by William about making a choice between, oh yeah, very short, okay. Well, I don't think you should make a choice between climate and child labour. And I think your duty is really to ensure that there isn't a choice to make on those factors, but maybe there is a choice to make between products from Bruno's company, for example, where they might be performing well on spare parts, and another company which isn't. These are the kind of choices which you may be able to illustrate with the product passport and make that kind of information available to consumers. So that's kind of the thing we had in mind. So thanks for working on this issue. Thanks.
Thank you. Laurent, very quick reaction if you have any.
Yes, perhaps a very quick reaction on the EPR and the free riders issue. We have already discussed that very quickly, but I think that this is still the main issue to tackle the free riders. And I'm not here talking about the producers, but all the actors collecting and dealing with waste along the chain. And so I would really stress the importance of any digital solutions that could tackle this problem, of course, because this is one of the major problems. I think that we, Pascal said during the introduction that only 55% of the e-waste is correctly reported. So I just want to remind everybody that this is one of the main challenge of this value chain, to be sure that everybody is reporting and that everybody is collecting accordingly. Voilà.
Great, thank you. And then Bruno.
Yes, thank you, Laurent, for taking the topic that I wanted to address, so I'm not going to repeat this. I want to chip in on what was said before, that the circular value chain by 2030 should be realized. I think we should, of course, set ambitious goals, but I think that that is a very ambitious goal, especially because there are a lot of products on the market which have a very long lifetime. Yeah, and I'm not only talking about let's say household appliances, but many other products have a very long lifetime. So that will be a very big challenge to achieve that. But you can count on BSH to be as ambitious as the European Commission. We have set ourselves very stringent goals, and yeah, we are of course working to achieve them. So contribution from our side guaranteed.
Thank you. Teresa?
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly react to the things that have been said, specifically about ICT, big data, and energy consumption. And indeed, we have to continuously stay evaluating the value and what it does, specifically if we look at carbon emissions. Absolutely. And I mean, there are already quite some good developments here. For example, Ethereum layer 2, which is basically a blockchain possibility that is expected to run actually carbon neutral pretty soon already. So yeah, that evaluation is something we will have to make on a day-to-day basis, absolutely. And we need improvements indeed on the recycling and selection and sorting process. I think Bruno mentioned it as well, just a digital twin alone is not going to do it. And I think I see a lot of technology solutions there as well with, for example, real-time detection of materials with AI and other things that can be combined with such digital twin systems and other data management systems. So we can certainly combine solutions there and move forward, because we indeed don't have that much time. Thank you.
Thank you, great. William, floor is yours again.
Thanks, Annika. Yeah, I'm lucky. Just to maybe come back to the question from the audience first, which was about the applicability to metals processing. And I think the one thing that springs to mind here is eliminating contamination in the streams, because if you look at the lost value from copper contamination in steel and copper contamination in aluminium and so on, it leads to real downcycling. And if we can make sure that we're getting more closed loop systems, it's not just about the sorting when it arrives at the gates of the recycler or the processing plant. It's about being able to follow the material as it goes through its cycle and make sure it's effectively recycled without losing that value. And then just to come back quickly on something that Pascal said, which nobody's talked about, which I think is important, is this invisible internet waste. And I think that a lot of the rolling out of the infrastructures and so on, we kind of ignore that. We talk about the consumer electronic devices. And I was looking at all of these plans in the recovery and resilience plans of the member states for rolling out 5G and electric vehicle charging networks and so on. And I was thinking, yeah, how durable are these? And this is a lot of public money going to this. Are they repairable? Are they recyclable? Are we looking at the design of these things? So I think that's something which we also need to focus on. It shouldn't be outside of our radar.
Great, thank you. Pascal?
Yeah, I'd like to respond to the question about the global aspect, because that wasn't addressed, and that was one of the questions. That is that I think that's a very relevant question, and you will see that this is going to be an emerging issue in the coming months and years. And we label it as the global EPR issue. I think we really have to start a conversation about this. And first of all, see, for example, how can the European Union, with 20 years of experience, legislative experience and implementation of EPR organizations and EPR schemes, how can we help the rest of the world also improve their systems? And I think there are a number of things that we can do. Of course, the time is short to map all this, but I think we really need to engage with the rest of the world. And actually in the WEEE Forum, we have such a program. We call it the Twinning Program, whereby mature PROs collaborate with emerging PROs in other parts of the world, in India, for example, South Africa, Colombia, and so on. And I think that's the kind of exercise that we need to do. And I think also the European Union should support these initiatives.
Excellent, thank you. Stefan, final word is yours.
Or just to thank once again to everyone for all their sorry, reflections and a very interesting discussion we had. Maybe just to shortly add on to a comment made by Mr. Dimitri Korpakis, I'd agree that there should be just a set of general principles on the responsibilities, what needs to be done, but we do have a very, still like a rich policy toolbox already there on circular economy as well as on digital. And we need to, in a way, I would say we need to be practical and to wire these existing legislation with our new ambitions while keeping the bigger picture. So not to keep it fragmented, but just to tailor it, you know, and if something works, we should still continue using it, yeah? But we just need to update it. So whether we talk about eco-design or EPR or the digital agenda itself, that is like a pragmatical approach while keeping the bigger picture, not letting everything fall apart. Otherwise, I would agree with everything that was said, and especially that we need the strong global action to export our good practices and to ensure that law is enforced and the waste is shipped when it supports circular economy. And this becomes a very big issue we need to address, especially now when we have e-commerce, which provides another challenge, and digitalization can help with better enforcement of the law and making our e-waste management circular, like electronics more circular.
Thank you so much. Thank you for our speakers for your valuable input. Thank you, WEEE Forum and SENS eRecycling, for joining us in this journey, putting the project together. And then obviously it's great that we were able to work on a publication and have also this final discussion to present the findings. So it's been a great journey, and obviously it's only a start, as we know that there's a lot happening on the policy field, but also just looking at what's happening on the business side. It's very exciting times to look at all these possible new ways of using digitalization and digital tools, as well as data, to actually help to address our sustainability challenges. And I do think that if we look at the discussion today, I think that improving e-waste management certainly provides a timely and important case in practice, as we try to explore how we can promote the twin digital and green transition. And there are obviously challenges to be addressed and we need to keep in mind, but at the same time, there are interesting prospects and possibilities. So we certainly, from the EPC side, we're keen to continue exploring these linkages in this twin digital and green transition, and we hope to take you also on this journey, and very much look forward to future discussions on the topic. But thank you again for everyone for participating and providing your insights and reflections, and we look forward to continue the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.